The Hellfire Club in Dublin is a place known to be full of mystery and intrigue. A strange old hunting lodge upon a hill, said to have been a place where all sorts of dark and unnatural deeds happened. In the old days of the Hellfire Club, it said that there lived a butler called Tom Reardon. Now, Tom was a decent and hard-working man, but he did have one vice. He was a terrible drinker. He drank even more than the guests themselves some night, which is probably how he ended up bottling for such impolite company. Now, one evening, Tom was on duty, and a stranger came to the Hellfire Club. A tall, handsome man in an expensive silken suit, a grand top hat upon his head. He introduced himself with a flourish and said that his name was Lucifer. Now, Tom knew that something was amiss, so he ran to get the president of the Hellfire Club to tell him that the devil himself was coming to visit, but the president had more important things to do than to listen to what the butler had to say, so he just sort of waved him away. And it was then that Lucifer pulled him aside, a smile upon his face, and he said, "Tom, don't you worry. You won't be left out of the festivities. In fact, the two of us, you and me, Tom, by the end of the night, we'll play a game of our own. We're going to play a round of Hell's Delight." And with that, he went back to the guests. Now, Lucifer, he was the talk of the evening. He schmoozed and mingled with the best of them, and Tom, for his part, he kept to the back of the room, and he drank. And he drank, and he drank. Every time he served a glass of brandy or ale, he would drink a good heaping of it himself. Now, in those days, in the Hellfire Club, the drink that they loved most of all was a drink called Scaltheen. Now, this is a drink of hot whiskey with melted butter. It goes down about as easily as a glass full to the brim with razor blades, but does get the job done. And he was drinking it practically by the pint. And towards the end of the night, he stumbled, and he nearly fell into Lucifer's grasp. And Lucifer, he stretched out a hand, and he took him by the chin, and he leaned Tom close till their faces were nearly touching. "Tom, my boy," he said, "I think you might need a little top-up, mightn't you?" And he took his glass of Scaltheen and he tipped it into Tom's mouth, and Tom's open mouth received this liquid as it flowed and flowed. It was only a very, very small glass indeed, but the liquid, the brandy and the Scaltheen, it flowed and flowed and flowed like a torrent, like a waterfall. It flowed down Tom's throat. And Tom, at this point, he was coughing and retching and spluttering, and he fell down to the ground. The crowd, they turned around and they laughed at the spectacle. This poor old fool of a butler there on the ground, coughing and spluttering, getting Scaltheens all over himself. And finally, the glass was finished. And Lucifer looked down at Tom, a smile upon his face. "Now, Tom," he said, "it's time we played that game I mentioned. It's time that we played Hell's Delight." And he reached into his waistcoat pocket and he pulled out a bottle, a beautiful crystalline thing, much more beautiful than the bottle that I'm holding right now. And he held this bottle up to the sky and he began to pour its contents down Tom's throat. Drop after drop, stream after stream. It wouldn't stop pouring this beautiful mixture of brandy down upon poor old Tom's face. It flowed into his mouth and it filled it up as if his lungs and his stomach were fit to burst already from the drink, and the party guests, they laughed and laughed at this excellent joke. But Lucifer felt that they could laugh harder. And so as he poured the brandy, he took from his other pocket a match, and he struck it, and he pressed the match to the stream of brandy, and it came alight, and the fire flowed down like water upon Tom's face, and Tom, he began to scream and wail and cry as his flesh began to bubble and sizzle, as the air around them was filled with the scent of burning pork, and the people, they rushed forward, concern upon their features. They ran for Tom, they moved to try to douse him with bottles of water, and they pushed their hands upon his skin, burning their fair, delicate fingers in the process. And they whirled around to accost this murderer, this Lucifer. They looked around to see where he was, but when they looked about, they found no one there. The door was open, and Lucifer was gone. But in time, the patrons of the Hellfire Club began to see the humour in the actions of Lucifer that night. And they began to do similar sorts of things themselves. This was the true start of the Hellfire Club, the beginning of its blaze of glory. And they began an odd tradition. They'd leave a chair out in the corner for Lucifer to sit upon, if he ever decided to grace them with his presence again. And maybe, one day, he will. Would anyone like a drink?